Empress Valera stood at the edge of the void glass observation deck, her silhouette stark against the burning world below. 10,000 years of rule had not dulled the satisfaction she felt watching rebellion turn to ash. Her platinum hair, woven with living starlight, cascaded down her back in a shimmer that seemed to bend reality itself. "Another lesson delivered, your eternity," said Admiral Chorus, bowing so deeply his forehead nearly touched the crystalline floor. "The Meridian species will trouble us no more." Valera didn't turn. How many survived? "None, Empress, as instructed." A smile touched her lips. "Perfect. Extinction is the only proper response to defiance. Weakness inspires weakness. Mercy invites challenge." She finally turned, her violet eyes containing galaxies of cold intelligence. "Prepare the Worldbreaker fleet for transition to the next system." The Admiral hesitated. "The human system, your eternity." Something flickered across Valera's ageless face, irritation, perhaps curiosity. "You seem troubled, Admiral." "Early reconnaissance reports are unusual, Empress. Their tactics do not follow expected patterns." Valera glided across the chamber, her body moving with the fluidity of someone who had mastered the illusion of physicality eons ago. "Elaborate." "They prioritize evacuation over fortification. They've developed shield technology specialized for protecting civilian populations rather than military assets. And most strangely," he paused, "they return for their wounded and dead, even at tactical disadvantage." The Empress laughed, a sound like crystal shattering. "How quaint! They waste resources on sentiment." She ran her fingers across a hovering display, expanding the image of the blue-green world designated Earth. "Every species believes they are exceptional, Admiral. Every civilization imagines they will be the one to withstand us. It is the final delusion before enlightenment through destruction." "Of course, your eternity." Valera studied the planet, feeling the familiar hunger for conquest rising within her immortal form. "These humans, how long have they existed?" "Their recorded civilization spans barely 10,000 years, Empress." "A blink," she whispered. "I was already ancient when their ancestors first scratched symbols into cave walls." She waved her hand dismissively. "Yet they've survived this long without destroying themselves. That suggests potential." The Admiral tensed. "Potential, Empress." "For a more interesting extinction," Valera clarified, her smile cold. "Perhaps I shall observe this one personally." Later, in her private chambers, Valera reviewed the battle footage captured by advanced scouts. Her eyes narrowed as she watched a human vessel deliberately position itself between Imperial fire and a damaged transport ship. The behavior made no tactical sense, sacrificing military advantage to save civilians who contributed nothing to the war effort. "Fascinating," she murmured. "They value individual lives over strategic victory." Her companion, Iran, a being she had kept close for centuries for both counsel and intimacy, approached with caution. "You seem intrigued by these mortals, my Empress." Valera allowed him to place his hands on her shoulders, his touch familiar yet distant. "They will fall like all the others," she said, leaning back against him. "But perhaps they will provide a moment's novelty before they kneel." "And if they refuse to kneel?" His lips brushed her neck. Valera's eyes flashed with ancient power. "Then, like all who came before, they will be erased so thoroughly that the universe itself will forget they ever existed." As Imperial warships prepared for the assault on humanity's homeworld, Valera felt something she hadn't experienced in millennia: anticipation. The Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion shuddered as another human counterattack breached its outer shields. Empress Valera gripped the command throne, her expression a mask of disbelief. "Impossible," she breathed. 3 weeks into what should have been a simple subjugation, and the human resistance had not only held but managed to repel 4 major assaults. "How are they predicting our attack vectors?" Strategic Director Merrick, his skin the color of burnished copper and etched with loyalty glyphs, approached with visible apprehension. "Empress, we've intercepted their communication channels. The humans are coordinating evacuations before attacking." "Evacuations? Still?" Valera rose from her throne, her form seeming to elongate with fury. "They waste resources saving refugees while we rain destruction upon them. It appears to be their primary objective, your eternity, and there's more." Merrick hesitated, then activated a holographic display. This is Commander Alexander Thorne. He leads their primary defense fleet. The image showed a human male with intense gray eyes and a face marked by both youth and determination. Unlike Imperial commanders with their ornate armor, he wore a simple uniform with minimal insignia. "Play the intercept," Valera commanded. Thorne's voice filled the chamber. "First priority remains civilian evacuation from sectors 7 through 12. Military assets are expendable, lives are not. Remember the Avalon Protocol, we fight not for territory but for time." Valera circled the hologram, studying the human commander. "The Avalon Protocol. A tactical doctrine, Empress. From what we've gathered, it prioritizes preservation of life over military victory." Marek's voice dropped lower. "Several Imperial commanders have reported confusion among our troops." "Confusion?" Her voice was dangerously soft. "The humans rescued Imperial soldiers from a disabled cruiser yesterday. They provided medical treatment before returning them unharmed with a message." Marek swallowed. "The message was addressed to you personally." Valera's eyes flashed. "Show me." Another hologram appeared, Commander Thorne standing among wounded Imperial soldiers. "Empress Valera, I return your people to you not as a gesture of weakness, but as a demonstration of strength. True power isn't measured by how many lives you take, but by how many you choose to spare. This is a lesson we'd rather teach than enforce." For the first time in centuries, Valera felt heat rise to her face. "The audacity," she hissed. "He lectures me on power, I who have outlived entire galactic cycles." Later that night, Valera summoned Iran to her private observatory. Through the panoramic viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel, partially obscured by the smoke of battles. "They fight differently," she said as he approached. "Not just tactically, but philosophically." Iran's fingers intertwined with hers, a familiarity no other being in the Empire would dare. "You've conquered thousands of worlds, my Empress. This one will fall like all the others." "Perhaps." She turned to him, her immortal features softened momentarily by contemplation. "But none have ever returned my soldiers. None have ever addressed me as an equal." "They are beneath you," Iran whispered, drawing closer. "Ephemeral creatures playing at significance." Valera allowed him to embrace her, but her eyes remained fixed on the human world. "Then why do they fight as though they have eternity, while my immortal armies begin to whisper of doubt?" The following day brought more frustrating reports. Human forces had broken through Imperial lines not to attack vulnerable command ships, but to evacuate colonies on a devastated moon. When Imperial forces closed in for the kill, the humans had scattered in all directions, drawing the attackers away from civilian transports. "Enough," Valera declared during a war council. "I want this Commander Thorne captured. Bring him to me alive." Admiral Chorus looked alarmed. "Empress, that would require a targeted infiltration rather than our standard annihilation protocols." "You question my command?" The temperature in the room plummeted. "No, your eternity. It shall be done." As the council dispersed, Valera remained alone, replaying Thorne's message. "True power isn't measured by how many lives you take, but by how many you choose to spare." "We shall see, Commander," she whispered to the hologram. "We shall see whose definition of power prevails when you kneel before me." Outside the Imperial flagship, the battle for humanity's survival raged on, with every human victory defying millennia of Imperial doctrine, and stirring something unexpected within the ageless Empress herself. The Imperial throne room was designed to intimidate, vast ceilings that seemed to stretch into infinity, walls of shifting nebula crystal that displayed conquered worlds, and at its center, the eternal throne, forged from the compressed cores of dead stars. Empress Valera sat perfectly still, only her eyes betraying interest as the human commander was brought before her. Commander Thorne stood straight despite his restraints, his uniform torn and bloodied from the battle that had led to his capture. 4 elite guards flanked him, their weapons ready. "Commander Alexander Thorne," Valera's voice echoed with the resonance of countless millennia. "The architect of my empire's first true military embarrassment." Thorne met her gaze without flinching. "I'm honored you consider our resistance notable, Empress." "Notable?" Valera rose, her form seeming to shimmer between corporeal and something more elemental. "You've cost me 7 capital ships and delayed my conquest by nearly a month. The last species to accomplish half as much is now extinct for 15,000 years. She descended the crystalline steps, her movements fluid and predatory. The guards tensed as she circled Thorn, studying him with the curiosity of a scientist examining an unexpected specimen. "I've watched you," she continued. "Your tactics defy conventional warfare. You sacrifice strategic advantage to save lives, even the lives of your enemies." She stopped directly before him. "Explain." "There's nothing to explain," Thorn replied. "We value life." "Value?" Valera laughed, the sound like ice breaking. "Value is measured in power, Commander. Power in dominance, dominance in fear." "Then you've been measuring incorrectly for a very long time." The guards shifted nervously, anticipating her wrath, but Valera merely tilted her head. "Enlighten me, mortal." Thorn's eyes reflected the starlight from the chamber walls. "You think power is in destruction, but real power is in saving what you can't afford to lose. Your empire is built on fear because you've never known anything else worth building upon." Poetic but meaningless. Valera turned away, her gown of living shadow trailing behind her. "I've conquered galaxies while your ancestors were still discovering fire." "And what have those conquests brought you, Empress? Not allies, not loyalty, not even peace." Thorn took a step forward before the guards forced him back. "If you disappeared tomorrow, how many worlds would mourn rather than celebrate?" Something flashed across Valera's ancient features, a micro-expression of disquiet so brief it might have been imagined. "Loyalty through fear is still loyalty." "No," Thorn said softly, "it's just delayed betrayal." Later, alone in her private chambers, Valera summoned Iran. He found her standing before a display showing human cities, not in ruins, but intact, with imperial prisoners being treated in human medical facilities. "Why haven't they executed our soldiers?" she asked without turning. Iran approached cautiously. "Perhaps it's a tactical move to demoralize us, or to appear morally superior. They return them to us healed, with messages of peace." She turned to him, her ageless eyes troubled. "In 10,000 years, I've never encountered such behavior from a species facing extinction." "They're naive," Iran said, drawing closer. His hands found her shoulders, a familiar intimacy. "They don't understand the universe's fundamental truth, that power consumes or is consumed." "Perhaps," Valera leaned into his touch, seeking comfort in the familiar. "Or perhaps they understand something we've forgotten." Their embrace deepened, a rare moment of vulnerability for the Empress, yet even as Iran's lips found hers, her mind remained fixed on the human commander's words. Meanwhile, deep within the Imperial flagship, Commander Thorn sat in his cell, watched by confused guards who had been ordered to treat him with unusual care. One guard, younger than the others, finally spoke. "The Empress spent 3 hours interrogating you. Most beings don't survive 5 minutes in her presence." Thorn smiled faintly. "She's curious." "About what?" "About why we fight the way we do." Thorn looked up at the guard. "Tell me, soldier, if the Empress were to fall tomorrow, would you mourn her loss or celebrate your freedom?" The guard's expression remained neutral, but his silence was answer enough. Across the ship, reports continued to arrive from the front lines, Imperial troops hesitating before firing on human medical transports, junior officers questioning whether total extermination was necessary, even instances of Imperial soldiers sharing rations with human prisoners. In her war chamber, Valera studied these reports with growing unease. For the first time in her eternal rule, dissent was spreading not through rebellion, but through doubt. And doubt, unlike rebellion, couldn't be quashed with force. "Bring the human to me again," she commanded. "I require further insights." What she didn't say, what she could barely admit to herself, was that Commander Thorn's words had awakened something within her that had slept for millennia: uncertainty. Empress Valera had lived for so long that disguise had become second nature. Cloaked in illusion magic that rendered her unremarkable, she walked among the human survivors in a refugee settlement at the edge of the combat zone. Imperial ships hovered in the distance, a constant reminder of destruction, yet here, impossibly, life continued. Children played in makeshift parks. Communal kitchens served modest meals with efficiency. Even more striking were the Imperial prisoners, not caged but working alongside humans, helping to construct shelters and distribute supplies. "They've given us a choice," explained a former Imperial lieutenant to someone who Valera recognized as a newly arrived refugee. We can help, return to the Imperial fleet, or simply stay neutral. No coercion. And you chose to help, the refugee asked. The lieutenant nodded. For the first time in centuries of service, I made my own decision. Valera moved through the settlement like a ghost, absorbing all she witnessed. In one medical tent, she paused. A human doctor was treating an injured Imperial soldier with the same care given to human patients. The soldier's insignia marked him as an elite guard, one who would have participated in countless planetary exterminations. Why treat him? Valera asked, her voice magically altered to sound ordinary. He would have shown you no mercy. The doctor, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and steady hands, didn't look up from her work. Because mercy isn't conditional, that's what makes it mercy. The simplicity of the answer struck Valera like a physical blow. Back aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Chorus delivered troubling news. Empress, our forces on the southern continent have refused an extermination order. They claim the human settlement there poses no military threat. They refused. Valera's voice was dangerously soft. Yes, your eternity, and there's more. The 7th Fleet encountered a damaged human medical transport. Instead of destroying it, they escorted it to safety. Valera closed her eyes, feeling the foundations of her eternal rule shift beneath her. Bring me Commander Thorn, now. When Thorn arrived, he noted the unusual atmosphere. The throne room empty of courtiers, only Valera herself waiting. Your influence spreads like a contagion, she said without preamble. My soldiers hesitate, my admirals question, even my inner circle whispers. Thorn studied her face. They're remembering something you've forgotten, Empress, how to make choices based on something other than fear. And you believe this makes them stronger? She rose from her throne, approaching him with predatory grace. Sentiment leads to hesitation. Hesitation leads to defeat. Is that what you fear, defeat? Thorn's voice softened. Or is it change? Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the flagship. A breathless messenger burst into the throne room. Empress, Imperial forces at the Helios outpost he faltered, have actively defended a human colony against orbital bombardment. What? Valera's composure cracked. Our own ships fired on each other, Empress. The human-aligned Imperials claim they were preventing unnecessary civilian casualties. As the messenger continued his report, Valera felt something she hadn't experienced in eons, the cold grip of fear. Not fear of the humans, but fear of what they represented, a fundamental challenge to everything she had built her eternity upon. Later, she found Iran waiting in her private chambers, his expression troubled. The Empire fragments, my Empress. We must crush this rebellion decisively. It isn't rebellion, she said quietly. It's transformation. Iran moved toward her, taking her hands in his. Then stop it. You've erased entire civilizations. These humans are no different. Aren't they? She pulled away, moving to the viewport. They fight not to destroy, but to preserve. They offer choices rather than demand obedience. They demonstrate rather than dictate. Valera, Iran whispered, using her name directly, something no one had dared in millennia. What has this human done to you? She turned, her ancient eyes filled with something new, doubt, certainly, but also possibility. He reminded me of something I forgot long ago when I first tasted immortality. What? That eternity becomes meaningless without purpose, and perhaps destruction is the poorest purpose of all. The next day brought reports of more Imperial defections. Entire battalions stood down rather than fire on human settlements. Supply ships diverted course to deliver aid rather than weapons. And throughout the Empire, worlds that had known only terror began to whisper of something they'd never dared imagine. Change. In the detention block, Commander Thorn received an unexpected visitor, the young Imperial guard from before. The Empress has been watching human settlements, the guard said quietly, in disguise. Thorn smiled. Good. Why is that good? She could be gathering intelligence to destroy you all. Or, Thorn replied, she could be learning to see with new eyes. Across the ship, in her war chamber, Valera stood before her assembled generals. Tomorrow, she announced, I will personally lead a final assault on the human command center. Admiral Chorus bowed, and Commander Thorn. Valera's expression revealed nothing. He will accompany me. It's time the humans witnessed the full extent of my power and my decision. What power that might be, and what decision she had reached, remained locked within the mind of the immortal who, for the first time in millennia, found herself standing at a genuine crossroads. Dawn broke over Earth's horizon as Imperial dropships descended through the atmosphere. At their center, the Empress's personal vessel, a gleaming construct of impossible geometries, cut through clouds like a blade through silk. Commander Thorne stood beside Valera on the command deck, unrestrained but surrounded by elite guards. "Is this your grand finale?" he asked quietly. "The moment where you prove your eternal doctrine correct by obliterating what remains of humanity?" Valera's eyes remained fixed on the approaching human command center, a sprawling complex nestled within a mountain range. "You presume to know my intentions, Commander? A dangerous habit." The Imperial fleet took formation above the last major human stronghold. Thousands of soldiers, millions of civilians, the remainder of a species that had defied extinction against impossible odds. Communications channels erupted with frantic human transmissions, preparation for a final, desperate stand. Yet no attack came. Instead, Valera's vessel continued its descent alone, landing in the central courtyard of the human command center. When the doors opened, a contingent of bewildered human officers found themselves face-to-face with the ageless Empress herself, flanked by Commander Thorne and her personal guard. General Elena Reeves, the silver-haired leader of Earth's unified defense, stepped forward. "Have you come to offer terms, Empress?" "I've come to witness," Valera replied, her voice carrying the weight of eons. "Show me your world, not as a conqueror, but as an observer." What followed was unprecedented in Imperial history. For 3 days, Valera walked among humans, visiting hospitals where Imperial wounded received care alongside human casualties, observing councils where former enemies now debated shared futures, witnessing families reunited against all odds. Throughout, she remained silent, absorbing everything while Commander Thorne remained at her side, an unlikely guide through a civilization built on principles alien to her eternal empire. On the 4th day, reports arrived of rebellion spreading throughout Imperial territories. Not violent uprisings, but something more profound. Planets declaring autonomy, Imperial garrisons laying down arms, ancient enemies establishing dialogues. "Your empire crumbles, Empress," Thorne said, as they stood on a balcony overlooking a city slowly rebuilding from Imperial bombardment. "Not from defeat, but from awakening." Valera's expression remained inscrutable. "I could still destroy this world with a word." "You could," he acknowledged, "but would that restore what's already been lost?" That evening, Valera summoned her most loyal commander, Admiral Chorus, and her closest companion, Iran. They arrived to find her transformed, her usual attire of intimidation replaced by simpler garments, her hair no longer woven with stars but falling naturally around her ageless face. "The empire as it was cannot continue," she announced without preamble. Iran stepped forward, his face contorted with disbelief. "You can't be serious. These humans have twisted your judgment." "No," Valera's voice was calm but resolute. "They've clarified it. For millennia, I've ruled through fear because I feared myself, feared that without absolute control, chaos would reign. I destroyed to prevent destruction." "And you were right," Iran exclaimed. "The universe respects only power." "There are different kinds of power," Valera replied, echoing Thorne's words. "I've witnessed one I never considered, the power of choice freely given, of loyalty earned rather than enforced." Admiral Chorus, ever the pragmatist, knelt before her. "What would you have us do, Empress?" Valera's gaze swept between them, Iran the embodiment of her past, Chorus perhaps a bridge to her future. "I am calling for transformation, not abdication. Our empire will evolve or it will dissolve." The following day, Empress Valera addressed not just Earth, but every world in her vast dominion. Her image, projected across 1,000 star systems, showed her standing not on her imperial throne, but on the steps of the human command center, with Commander Thorne at her side. "For millennia, I have ruled through fear, believing it the only constant in an ever-changing universe," she began. "I was wrong. Today, the Eternal Empire begins a new chapter, one where worlds may choose their governance, where conquest gives way to cooperation, where power is measured not by destruction but by creation." Throughout the Empire, stunned silence gave way to cautious hope. On countless worlds, beings who had known only imperial terror dared to imagine alternatives. Not all embraced Valera's transformation. Iran and a faction of hardliners attempted a coup, commandeering the Worldbreaker fleet for a final assault on Earth. They were met not only by human forces but by imperial ships commanded by Admiral Chorus, who had made his choice. In the aftermath, as the new coalition took shape, Commander Thorne found Valera alone in a garden of Earth plants being cultivated from nearly extinct samples. "What does an immortal do?" she asked without turning, "when eternity suddenly offers infinite possibilities rather than infinite power?" Thorne stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "The same thing the rest of us do, discover who you are beyond who you've been. And if I've been a monster for longer than your species has existed, then you have eternity to be something better." His hand found hers, a touch both defiant and intimate. "Starting now." As the sun set on the first day of a transformed empire, the ageless empress allowed herself something she hadn't experienced in millennia: uncertainty about the future, and the exhilarating freedom it offered. Her fingers intertwined with thorns, immortality meeting mortality in a gesture that defied her ancient doctrine. For the first time in an eternity of conquest, Empress Valera discovered a victory more profound than any she had won through devastation. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of possibility. The universe, watching in wonder, held its breath to see what would come next.